Hello everyone and welcome to the finals of the Chess.com Speed Chess Championship. Hikaru Nakamura versus Maxime Vachier Lagrave. Nakamura defeated Wesley So in the semifinals, and Maxime defeated Magnus Carlsen, and here they are. This is a game from the 5+1 portion. For those of you who don't know, the Speed Chess Championship works in a way that they play 3 mini matches. The first mini match is a series of games in 5+1. That's 5 minutes plus 1 second increment, then 3+1, and then in the end a bullet 1+1. So this is I've waited for the 5+1 section to finish, and this is the nicest game I've seen. So this is the one I decided to show you guys, and I'm probably going to show a few more, at least one tomorrow from the other section. So let's see what happens here. Nakamura with the white pieces opens with e4. Sorry about that. We have c5 by Maxime, going for his Sicilian, of course, which is what he usually does. He's the world's greatest expert on the Sicilian defense. Knight to f3 and d6. And Nakamura not interested in playing right into his strong hand with an open Sicilian like d4. Goes for bishop to c4. And Maxime continues knight to f6. Attacks the e4 pawn. And here d3, defending that pawn. We have a6, preparing to attack the bishop with b5, and now c3, making room for the light square bishop to escape if b5 comes. So this is exactly what Maxime plays. b5, we have bishop to b3, and now there are some games where knight to b7 and bishop to b7 were played, but here we have e6, and it's as of move 6 that we have a completely new game. So let's see how it continues. Knight b to d2. And this is something very often seen in positions like this. It's actually a position more similar you would see against, in a Ruy Lopez than you would in a Sicilian defense. But you know, if it works, why not? Bishop to b7, and here Nakamura castles. We have bishop to e7 and rook to e1, developing the rook, making room for the knight to shift to f1 and then to g3 or e3, depending on what black plays. Knight b to d7, and now bishop to c2. d4 is coming at some point, and this bishop will be occupying this very strong diagonal. Queen to c7, and now comes knight to f1 by Hikaru, and here Maxime finally castles. So if you look at the position now, white doesn't have much. Black basically has more than he would have if white played some of the main lines, but Maxime is he is much better, for example, in these main lines than Hikaru, and of course Hikaru wants to avoid this. So knight to g3, and now rook f to e8, preparing to shift over the bishop to f8, and the rook will be very strong on the e file. We have h3, and now bishop to f8 as planned, and here d4, so really slow playing the position as much as possible. Rook a to c8, now with the idea of c captures and d4 captures and picking up that bishop, or rather captures and captures, but white doesn't want to mess up his pawn structure, so Hikaru just moves the bishop, so now he will be able to recapture on d4, and here e5. Now there's a lot of pressure on d4, and Hikaru decides to close the position, and now it's a better position for white, definitely. This bishop really locked in, the dark square bishop not doing all that much, and black doesn't have so many things to do, but Maxime finds a very active idea. c4. He frees the c5 square for the knight, and the bishop is under attack. Bishop back to c2, and now g6, preparing to fianchetto the dark square bishop as well. So we have a4, preparing to play captures, and then maybe bring the rook over to a7. In any way, just opening up the a file for the rook, and now knight to c5 as planned. So bishop to e3, continuing development, and now knight f to d7. If the knight is captured, you could recapture with this knight. Also, at some point, you might be interested in a move like f5, although not likely. f6 is it would be a better choice for black here. So knight to h2, shifting the knight over to g4, as these are some weak squares black has here. Queen to d2 is definitely coming, and then the bishop to h6, the usual plan against the fianchettoed dark square bishop. So bishop to g7, and now queen to d2, preparing that bishop to h6 maneuver. Rook to f8, and now comes bishop to h6. So the usual plan white would do, you trade off the dark square bishop, white has some holes here in the position, and then you push h4, h5, open up the position and attack the black king, and hopefully black's pieces will not be able to help out. So f6 by Maxime, and now comes knight to g4. so preparing bishop captures, and then the queen can come to h6 as the knight now covers that square as well. Rook to f7, and here h4. Now h5 is coming, so knight to f8 by Maxime. And if you look at this position, it's a very ugly position for black to play. Not a lot of active plans. You don't really have, you have no idea where to place your pieces. Like this knight doesn't have anywhere to go. This knight can come to f8, the queen and rook not really doing all that much. The bishop stuck here, aiming at nothing. So it is maybe a very annoying position to play, but Maxime could be used to such positions and he might be able to wiggle out of them. So knight to f8 by Maxime. And now first a captures on b5. A captures, and now not going for rook to a7 right away. First h5. This is where the action is happening. And here he ignores it, because if g5, then you allow the knight to come to f5, and it's a very ugly position for black. So instead, rook to b8, probably preparing for this rook to a7 move, and also it might be useful later on to play a move like b4. So h captures on g6, h captures, and now finally bishop captures on g6. And now what do you play here? Rook captures is an option, but then you allow knight captures on f6 with check. So Maxime wants to avoid this. He plays king captures, and now queen to h6 with check. King to g8, and now comes queen to h4, attacking the f6 pawn. And here Maxime goes back, king to g7, defending the pawn twice, and now he's hoping for a repetition. Queen h6 check, king g8, and queen goes back to h4. However, Hikaru, not want to be tricked easily, just brings another attacker into the game. Rook e3, preparing to move the knight, even sacrifice it, maybe bring the rook over to the h file, checkmate the black king, who knows what can happen here. And Maxime goes bishop to c8. It's a very hard position to play for black, but here this is a beautiful position where white has a very, very strong idea. So feel free to pause the video and figure out the best move for white here while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting knight to h6, as this is what Nakamura played, but there is an even greater move here. So for those of you who found knight to f5 with check, then congratulations, you are a phenomenal player. This just completely busts open the king side, and it doesn't matter. You can capture with the pawn, you can capture with the bishop, doesn't really matter, but you cannot not capture if you just go king to g8, knight g to h6 is coming, and that's just game over. So here you would have to capture it with the bishop or the pawn, doesn't really matter, because then rook to h3. This is what you actually wanted to do, just to free up the third rank for the rook to come to h3, and now you're threatening check, king goes upwards, and then queen h8 will be checkmate. So you could try and play it out, and I'm just going to show it because it's a beautiful line. For example, knight h7, you have to give up something to be able to escape. Queen captures, king f8. Now we're going to go queen h8 capture, queen h8 check, king to e7, and now rook to h7, threatening to capture, and then queen here check, picks up the queen, and there's not much you can do here. If captures, captures with check and king d8, now comes queen to h8 with check. King to e7, queen to g7 with check, king has to go to d8, queen f8, sorry, here knight captures on f6 would come if this is played, but if you go here, then just queen to f8 with check, king d7, and now knight captures on f6 is checkmate. So either way. So this is what happens if you immediately go for knight to f5. Hikaru played knight to h6 instead. It's enough to win this, and now comes knight to h7. If you try to move the rook, for example, something like rook e7, then again knight g to f5 is just crushing, because if after captures rook g is coming, and you're not escaping this. Knight has to block, queen h5 is coming, and you can now try to escape with the king, but it's, it would be pointless to even play this. Rook g7, queen captures on f6, king to e8, now rook captures on g7, and it's just a terrible position. Let's say bishop d7, rook g8, this is checkmate, completely crushing. So here, after knight to h6, we have knight to h7, and now comes knight captures on f7. So Maxime gives up a bit of material to try and survive this, but now queen captures on f7, and now f4. Hikaru just launches the pawn forward, wants to bust open the position. f5 is coming. So bishop back to d7, and now comes f5. Black doesn't really have any active moves here. If g5, just queen h2, you're gonna free up the h5 square for the knight, bring the rook into the game. Not a lot for black to do here. So after f5, you have rook to h8. Now trying to use the H file for black's rook, but now f captures on g6, and again, not a lot to do here. Queen captures on g6 is played. You could also try knight to f8 to open up an attack towards white's queen, but then you first capture the rook with check, king captures, and now you grab this, you're up a whole rook and also up the exchange, completely winning for Hikaru. So after f captures, we have queen captures on g6, and now finally knight to f5 with check. Here Maxime played bishop captures and e captures on f5, and it was in this position on move 38 that Maxime Vachier resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. They had a lot of time on the clock, they had like 2.5 minutes each, so time wasn't an issue here. Black is completely busted. So here you resign, because if you try to go this way, then just rook g3, let's say, wins the queen, and if you try something else, let's say you bring the queen over to f7, then you can pretty much play anything. Rook g3 check, king f8, queen to h6 check, king to e8, now comes rook to a8 check. Let's not forget about our good friend the other rook, rook a8 check, king e7, and now rook a7 check. There's nothing for black to look for here. Rook to g7 is coming, it's completely crushing. This is a disgusting position even to look at. I just might use it for a thumbnail even. But yeah, that's the game. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. So like I said, it's from the 5+1 minute section. We're going to show some other games as well. Hikaru is leading by a 1-point margin after the 5+1 section. We'll see what happens in the 3+1 section, and then of course in the 1+1 bullet section. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you guys enjoyed it and that you're enjoying the chess.com Speed Chess Championship. I would like to thank Elena Barlera, Sean Granger, Robert Fisher, Vladimir Gonzalez, and Emre Uyar for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. Robert Fisher said that if I ever want to play him, I can, and then I can say I defeated Robert Fisher. It might not be a bad idea to use it like as a clickbait. AGADMATOR faces Robert Fisher. We'll see if we can make it happen. So yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon.